Picture a crowded steakhouse on a Friday night. The air smells like expensive cologne, roasted garlic, and quiet desperation. Around the table, a group of 25-year-olds are fighting over who gets to pay the inflated bill. They aren't fighting because they're generous. They're fighting because they desperately need the imaginary points. One by one, they slam heavy, metal credit cards onto the table. Platinum, titanium, cards that clink like casino chips. They wear designer logos stretched across their chests, checking their finance smartphones, loudly complaining about how inflation is destroying their purchasing power. And then there's you. You're sitting at the end of the table in a plain, unmarked black t-shirt. You quietly calculate your exact share, pull out a cheap, matte plastic debit card from a regional bank no one has ever heard of, and slide it to the waiter. Your friends give you that look, the look of pity. They think you're struggling. They think you're falling behind in the great American race. They think they are winning because their credit limits are higher than your apparent net worth. They don't know the truth. They don't know that while they are drowning in 72-month car loans and revolving credit card debt at 29% interest, you are sitting on $500,000 in liquid assets, $500,000, cold, hard, and completely invisible. You could buy the restaurant, fire the manager, and turn the place into a parking lot. But you don't say a word. You just smile, sip your ice water, and agree when your buddy complains about how the economy is rigged against his generation. Why? Why does the guy with more equity than the rest of his bloodline combined break into a cold sweat at the thought of his friends discovering his bank balance? Because you figured out the ultimate flaw in the machine. You've realized that the moment society finds out you have capital, you become a target. The modern definition of success is a trap designed to extract your wealth. We've been brainwashed to believe that if you grind, hustle, and make money in your 20s, you are morally obligated to prove it. You have to buy the $80,000 luxury SUV. You have to rent the high-rise apartment downtown. You have to wear a watch that costs more than a college degree. This is the vanity tax. It's a brilliantly designed mousetrap for young egos. The system doesn't want you to be wealthy. The system wants you to look wealthy, so you can hand your real money right back to the banks in exchange for depreciating metal and cheap dopamine. They bait the hook with status, and an entire generation of premium broke lab rats bites down hard, trading their future financial autonomy for the temporary illusion of importance. Society hates stealth wealth. It despises the invisible millionaire. When you don't flex, you make the people drowning in debt deeply uncomfortable. You become a glitch in their programming. If they admit that real money is silent, they have to face the terrifying reality that their loud lifestyle isn't a sign of success. It's a receipt for their slavery. So you keep your mouth shut. You play the role of the average guy. You let them win the argument about who has the better credit card rewards program. But the psychological weight of wearing that invisible crown is heavier than you ever imagined. Because staying hidden in plain sight comes with a brutal social cost. And the isolation of being the only free man in a room full of willing prisoners is about to break you. You walk out of that steakhouse and get into your 5-year-old, paid-off sedan. Your friend's brand-new European SUV roars past you, fueled by a 72-month financial death sentence. He honks, thinking he's won the night. You grip the steering wheel, your $500,000 net worth sitting quietly in brokerage accounts, feeling an overwhelming sense of alienation. Friendships in your 20s are rarely built on ambition. They are built on the mutual comfort of shared financial incompetence. Bonding over brokenness is the love language of the modern middle class. Your friends sit in group chats complaining about skyrocketing rent and unfair bosses. To fit in, you have to nod. You have to actively pretend that a $400 emergency would ruin your week. If you tell them you haven't worried about bills since you were 22, you don't inspire them. You offend them. You become the enemy because your existence proves their excuses are invalid. So you wear the mask. But keeping that disguise on starts to suffocate you. Rule 1. The weight of the invisible crown. The pressure to break character is immense. You watch your peers drowning. The guy who bought the expensive truck is now working overtime just to make the insurance payment. Part of you wants to shake him. You want to tell him to sell the metal trap and buy his life back. But you don't. Because the second you reveal the $500,000 sitting in your portfolio, the dynamic permanently shatters. You are no longer their equal. You become a walking ATM. Suddenly, you're the prime target for every terrible startup idea and every emergency loan. The system has conditioned the premium broke consumer to view anyone with capital not as an inspiration, but as a resource to be extracted. They are running so furiously on the wheel, buying the bait on high-interest credit, that anyone standing quietly outside the cage looks like a selfish anomaly. They will resent you for having the discipline they lacked. They will call you lucky, erasing the Friday nights you spent building equity while they were buying bottle service. You sit through the agonizing dinners. You let them treat you like the slow one in the group. You absorb the subtle disrespect. You do it because maintaining your financial autonomy requires absolute camouflage. Rule 2. The social tax of sanity. The isolation isn't even the hardest part. The hardest part is wondering if you are the one who went crazy. When 99% of the people around you are financially bleeding to death and calling it a victory, it takes a terrifying level of conviction to trust your own spreadsheet. There are nights when the temptation to just lease the sports car and finally get their respect feels entirely rational. But then you look at the cold numbers. You look at the exact mathematical penalty of joining their vanity parade. You realize that buying their approval doesn't just cost cash. It costs irrecoverable human life. And the math behind that transaction is the exact reason you keep your mouth shut. Let us do the math that the luxury car dealership conveniently leaves out of their glossy brochures. Let us calculate the true price of the vanity tax. Your friend didn't just buy a European SUV for $80,000. That is the lie the machine feeds him to make the poison taste sweet. He financed that metal box over 72 months at an 8% interest rate because his credit score, his shiny little obedience collar, told the bank he was a good, predictable consumer. By the time he owns that depreciating trap, he will have paid nearly $95,000. But that is just the surface scratch. The real hemorrhage is the opportunity cost. If he had taken that monthly payment of roughly $1,300 and quietly placed it into a simple market index fund, earning an average historical return, in 30 years, that monthly ego trip wouldn't just be a rusty driveway ornament. It would be nearly $2 million in liquid cash. $2 million. Poverty in your 20s is rarely a lack of income. It is the immediate surrender of capital to avoid looking poor in front of people you don't even like. The system survives because the modern lab rat is terrified of being perceived as average. The bank doesn't steal your wealth. It simply waits for your ego to hand it over on a silver platter. You aren't buying a car. You are selling your retirement to a financial institution at a 90% discount. Rule 3. The $1 million handshake. This is what makes sitting at that dinner table so excruciating. You are doing the math in real time while they order overpriced cocktails. You look at your $500,000. If you never add another dime to that account and let it sit in the market for the next 20 years, you wake up at 45 with over $2.3 million. You've already won the game. You crossed the finish line while they are still arguing over who gets to tie their running shoes first. But to protect that timeline, you have to let them think you're losing. They view their high incomes as a license to consume. You view your capital as an impenetrable fortress. The difference between you and the premium broke pack is how you measure time. They measure time in 30-day billing cycles. You measure time in decades of guaranteed autonomy. But the friction of living two lives starts to grind down your sanity. The constant acting, the deliberate downplaying, the fake sympathy you have to show when someone complains about credit card interest rates they willingly signed up for. Rule 4, the compounding cost of ego. The truth is, your wealth is a loaded weapon. If you fire it in the air for everyone to see, you attract the predators. You attract the endless expectations and the quiet envy. You realize that keeping the $500,000 a secret is no longer just a preference. It's a strict survival protocol. If you want to keep the money, the Ghost Act cannot end. But how do you survive the next decade completely isolated in your success? How do you accept being the invisible king in a kingdom of loud peasants? The answer requires a radical rewiring of your brain. You have to kill the desire to be understood. That is the final mutation. The reason you broke into a cold sweat at that restaurant wasn't just the fear of becoming a human ATM for your friends. It was the terrifying realization that true freedom is inherently lonely. You cannot bring the pack with you. If you want to escape the machine, you have to accept that the other lab rats will view your exit as a betrayal. They will think you failed the game simply because you refused to run on their wheel. Rule 5, the Phantom Protocol. Welcome to the psychology of stealth wealth. It is the hardest discipline to master because it goes completely against every primal human instinct we possess. We are biologically wired for status. We want the tribe to know we are successful, so we don't get left behind. But you have to brutally sever the link between your ego and your net worth. You have to look at your cheap, matte plastic debit card and see it for what it truly is, a shield. The illusion of being average is the armor that protects your timeline. The moment you strip off that armor to stroke your own ego, you invite the predators. You invite the lifestyle creep. You invite the quiet envy that rots lifelong friendships from the inside out. I have watched millionaires go absolutely bankrupt, trying to prove to people they don't even like that they are still rich. It is a pathetic, endless loop. Here is the absolute truth about visibility. Society doesn't actually reward the wealthy. Society rewards the loud so it can easily identify who to tax, who to sue, and who to scam. The truly powerful individuals in this world do not wear labels across their chests. They quietly own the factories that print those labels for the premium broke masses. So, how do you survive the next decade without losing your mind? You weaponize apathy. When your friend with the $80,000 financed SUV cuts you off in traffic, you don't feel anger. You feel a quiet, clinical pity. When they mock your 5-year-old sedan, you don't defend it. You laugh right along with them. You let them win every single argument at the dinner table. You let them feel intellectually superior while they explain the airline points they earned buying things they couldn't afford. You must find a perverse joy in being underestimated. Let them think you are boring. Let them think you lack ambition. The ultimate flex isn't pulling up to a rented VIP table in a leased sports car. The ultimate flex is waking up at 7 in the morning on a random Wednesday, looking at your bedroom ceiling, and knowing with absolute mathematical certainty that you do not have to be anywhere, do anything, or answer to anyone if you choose not to. It is the quiet, intoxicating power of no. Your friends cannot say no. Their high-interest debt has turned them into professional yes men. They have to say yes to the toxic boss and the mandatory overtime because the bank demands its pound of flesh on the first of every month. You become the phantom of your social circle. A ghost who never complains about inflation, never stresses about corporate layoffs, and never loses sleep over an unexpected medical bill. You smile, you nod, and you quietly buy more index funds on a Tuesday afternoon while they are having a panic attack in an office bathroom. That is the exit. The rat race doesn't end with a parade or a golden trophy. It ends in complete, beautiful silence. It ends the day you realize that having $500,000 in liquid capital isn't about buying a better, shinier cage. It is about buying the master key, walking out the back door, and never explaining yourself to the prisoners again. You are 25. You have already won the war. Now, your only job is to shut your mouth and let the math do the heavy lifting for the next 20 years. If you are one of the rare few who actually understand this, if you are quietly building your empire in the dark while the rest of the world screams for attention, drop a comment saying, "Match plastic monarch." The loud ones will have no idea what it means. But we will know you are awake. My name is Daniel Rath, and I'll see you outside the maze.